Welcome to the What Now podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Powers. Follow along as I figure out how to go from feeling lost and at a crossroads in my life to hopefully, eventually, being found. If you have ever felt like you needed a change or pivoting from your current experience is necessary, but you just don't know how, join me. Wanderers are always welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What Now, a podcast for Lost and Found. This is your host, Amanda. I am so happy to be here. I got Dirk sitting right behind me. You want to say hi to the people? Thank you. Now my microphone has a bunch of slobber on it. I really should stop doing that. It's probably not sanitary, but whatever. Dirk says hi. Welcome back to the show, everyone, where I sit and contemplate my life's choices and share all those vulnerabilities with you. But welcome. I am so excited to be here. I have had, a busy week with work. We've got a lot going on at the office, trying to play a little bit of catch up after the wedding still, and finding some more opportunities for us to go after with the federal government and the state government. And things are looking up in places we did not expect, and that's lovely. Super good news there. But other places where we were not expecting to be down are a little down, and that's not a fun thing. So it's a little bit half-hearted right now going on this week, but good things are coming our way. I am choosing to believe that. So that's all good. But how have you guys been? Tell me about your lives. Like, I wish I could hear more. So somebody's ow, Dirks, please, honey. I know you're crying, but please don't. Let's get into this week's episode. Because of everything that was crazy, really, with this week at work, I have not had as much time to kind of think about a personal story for me. There really isn't much that I went through this week that I thought was really relatable for an episode. So I've had kind of a hard time coming up with what it is that I wanted to talk about. But I went back through my notes app, and I have been doing at least a good job of when things creatively come to mind, I write them down or take notes or write down an idea of whatever it is that I'm thinking in that moment. Because I don't know about you, for y'all, but I am not a full-time content creator, so I have not trained my brain and personality and whatnot to start thinking of these things constantly and like being mindful of the experience around me and figuring out a way to turn that into consumption for the public. I really started the podcast because I needed an outlet to get things out of my head, not necessarily that I was trying to impart some kind of viral sensation, because let's be real, the likelihood of anything that I'm ever going to say go viral is silly, but I only get spurts of creativity every now and then. So when I have them, I write them down, is the point of that story. So because I did not have anything in my personal life that came up this week that I wanted to talk about, I went back through my notes to try and find, okay, when did I write something down that I think would be useful for the show? Earlier this summer, a friend of mine, one of my sorority sisters, Chloe, and I were hanging out and joking and talking about how after college, she ended up living in Italy for a little while for one of her first jobs. And the experiences that she had and what that was like, and, things that she missed and whatever. And eventually she came across this TikTok video from a young creator named Hana, I want to say Hana Elson, Hanaelson, Hana Elson. And the video was Hana explaining her trip in Italy with her friend Shea, and that Shea had found an Italian lover, or a young man who had treated her very well and was very kind and protective over Hana, and particularly Shea, of course, while they were there in Italy. And so Hana vlogged part of their Italian trip, but one of the vlogs that she had made was this whole TikTok video of just this boy this young man being so kind to her friend Shea and basically teasing the viewer about, well, the reason you can't get a call back or a text back or you get ghosted in the United States, it's because you never went to Italy to find your boyfriend. That's how you solve all your dating relationship problems. Just go to Italy for a month with your friend and you'll find somebody. And it was just super sweet and cute. And so then I do remember myself like sending that to my parents and being like, I'm moving to Italy, bye. Like, deuces, Nashville, see you later. And apparently that I've been doing it wrong this whole time, living inside of the United States. That's my problem. And so they thought that was funny. So I wrote that down. But then I started going down a rabbit hole of both of their profiles on TikTok and learning about these young women based on their videos. And I was really drawn to Shea's content because she started to talk about being UGC, which is a user-generated content, and being a UGC content creator. And I didn't know what that phrase was. It was the first time I'd ever heard of it. So I started like doing a rabbit hole for like myself, like, oh, is this a potential revenue for the podcast? Is this something I should be doing for the show to either like help it generate viewership or reach new audiences or whatever? I was mostly looking at her stuff just for my own education to kind of figure out what exactly is this. And I am now aging myself terribly since I'm like, oh my God, I'm older than these young women. I think they're in their late 20s, mid to late 20s. Like they're young women trying to find their way in the world. And I was relating to what they were talking about on their pages, but particularly Shea, because her profile on Instagram and TikTok was very eye-opening. And I started to realize as I'm watching all these videos about her and her life and what she's choosing to share with her mental health and her struggles with her eating disorders and her depression, anxiety, and dealing with feeling lost in the world. So I'm watching this beautiful, well-educated, young woman who has like this dream travel life, at least in a one-dimensional format, right? Like on paper, aka TikTok. She seems to be having the best of everything, right? And she gets to create her own content and get paid for it. She gets to travel and get paid for it. She gets to meet all of these people all over the world. She gets to travel with her friends. Like 25, 26, 27-year-old Amanda could have never, ever dreamed of being able to do that. I chose a completely different path. I probably should have gotten rid of all of my social media way back in the day. When I started a career in national security, you really are not supposed to have a public-facing profile. You can, in a certain sense, but they always tell you need to stay private. You can't talk about the job. You shouldn't be talking about where you work. For safety reasons, you shouldn't post this, or this. For legal reasons, you cannot post these types of topics. You can't openly talk about these things and associate yourself with the job. All kinds of stuff. And some of it to regulate safety for you, some of it to regulate safety for the job itself, and then some of it to just mitigate inter-office turmoil, I think, sometimes. But because of that, I only used my profiles to interact with my own friends, people I'd actually met in real life. So I never grew a following ever. And the fact that I have a public profile as of 2 years ago is still weird to me. But anyway, the point of the story, I'm losing track here, is that this beautiful, well-educated dream life of a woman who's getting to travel all over the world and get paid to do content is still creating content in between all of those trips to talk about how unhappy she is sometimes. And she admitted in some of her videos to going to therapy multiple times a week, almost up to 5 times a week if needed, because she needed to deal with her own trauma. She admitted that she was recovering from an eating disorder and that she uses her content to help educate others about the disorders. And she shows ways to support friends or family or loved ones who deal with the same disorders. So she's giving not only educational awareness to the issue, but providing content that could be helpful in application as well. So if you're if you have somebody in your life that's dealing with something very similar to what Shea deals with, you can watch Shea's videos and learn how to interact with your own family member, your own friend, your own loved one. And quite honestly, I think given the direction that our world is going in, a lot of people use the internet for facts or to find information very quickly. And it's not typical to meet somebody that does a lot of their own research. So I find it to be much more common to get word of mouth recommendations based on what you've seen on Instagram or TikTok, or ads that are being fed to you, things that are being pushed on your phone. And so I think it's great that she's using her platform to try and explain her personal experience with her struggles. And despite having this appearance of being a well put together young woman, there's so much more to her than just a 27-year-old blonde girl that gets to travel. And I liked that she's not afraid to show you dark depth, not just general stuff about her background and her life. Like, here's 30 things to get to know me, and etc. It was refreshing to see how honest she is about her coping mechanisms and whether or not the coping mechanisms that she's used throughout her life have been useful, which ones have been useful, which ones have not been useful, and how she applies those in her life today. Because I started watching all these videos from her, and all I could think about was just like, wow, here's this 27, 28-year-old woman, and she's beautiful and she's independent. And I started to think, so am I. So I can't just sit here in my own home saying that same shit to myself that she warns you about that nobody should say to themselves. There's videos where she talks about, her internal self-talk and how bad it is and how cruel and judgmental and just false that it is, especially when she's talking about her body dysmorphia and concerns about her eating disorders. And I might be older than her, but I'm also beautiful and independent and strong in my own ways. And there's such a slippery slope when you're judging a book by its cover, kind of, and how you're choosing to compare your life to somebody else and other people on the internet, especially. And you never know what somebody else is actually dealing with or struggling with. And until they open that up and allow you into that vulnerable space, you're never really going to know. And if you are similar to me and to her, if you live alone, I thought it was good that she was giving warnings out to people, to her followers, to her content consumers, that just because these are things that I struggle with and I say, it doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them the correct thing to do and to process. This is a warning. Don't go down the path that I'm going down. Don't go down this road. Don't speak to yourself this way, because it's not going to get you to where you think you want to go. And that when she starts to speak to herself this way is when she is realizing that she's the most lost. That's really when she starts feeling worse about her situation or her current path in life and her plans. And I feel for that so hard, because the things that she's talking about, even though she lived a completely different life from me, the feelings of, am I ever going to measure up? Am I ever going to be good enough? Is this really the right plan? Am I doing the right thing? Am I going in the right direction? Am I making a name for myself in a way that I'm going to be proud of? Am I using my degree the way I was supposed to? Am I not using it? Am I throwing it down the drain? Was this even worth it? How do I know that the next choice I'm going to make is the right choice? And she's only 27, maybe 28. And those are all things that I started asking myself at 31. And it's really hard to answer those questions when you feel alone or when you feel like you can't talk about it. So it hit me really hard to see this young woman talking about feeling lost and not knowing where her life is going and whether or not she's found the right path for her purpose. And it just gave me a renewed sense of feeling, less alone for me. She's admitting to feeling super alone and lost and scared and trying to figure herself out, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in your 20s. Your 20s are supposed to be, what is it? Complete, what did I say the other day? Something about being a total got all a total, like Eliza Schlesinger calls it, your goblin, right? Not trash rabbit, trash bandit. What is it where you see raccoons in the trash? I don't know. Like, you're just feral, right? Like, you're just out there making all kinds of choices and decisions and keeping your life sort of together, or you think you are, because your goal in your 20s was just to try and have as much fun as possible and like find a job that helps you sustain the lifestyle that you're trying to build up and become and roll yourself into. But half the time you keep thinking, is this roller coaster going to stop? At some point the roller coaster has to stop, right? Like, I've been up, I've been down, I've gone really fast, I've swerved left, I've swerved right, and some of these curves were fun and some of these curves made me puke, and some of these are just heart-wrenching and exciting all at the same time, and you're hoping that at some point the roller coaster stops. And the truth is, it might never. It might never. You either just keep riding the same ride, or you might figure out how to hold your barf better, maybe. I don't know. As you get older. But the ride never actually stops. And as much as it pained me to watch her videos with that much raw honesty, it made me feel better, because it helped me feel valid in what I've been thinking and saying and sharing lately with you guys. And it gave me hope that by being honest on my own podcast, that maybe someday my voice is going to reach other people the way that her TikTok reached me eventually, right? And I'm hoping that someday my voice is going to help other people like her in her position and remind them that every single feeling that they're having is real and valid, and being alone or feeling lonely while you're lost, it's not as scary as it seems. Being lost while you're trying to figure out your life, at least the older I get, or the longer I've been talking on this show, I think I get more frustrated with the lack of control, the lack of the unknown. But I'm not as scared as I think I would have been if I had started to deal with this much, much younger. Because in my 20s, I was pretty steadfast. I knew exactly what it is that I wanted to do. I had very specific goals. I had very specific career paths in mind, and I did nothing but that. I went after that. I got degrees in that pathway. I networked with people to get me through that particular position. And I made it. I didn't go as far as I had thought I would, but I did make it happen. So I was very single-minded. I wasn't really worried about that until like 10 years in, and you're starting to think, ooh, ouch. What am I doing anymore? Which is a whole different set of scary, right? And I kind of felt like I woke up from a bad dream and didn't know where the hell I was. I haven't gone full confusion yet, or full self-loss. I think I got really close, but I never had a moment like that where I looked in the mirror and truly had no idea who was looking back at me. It's never gotten that bad, but I think it could have if I had not stood up for myself and figured out this is not a path I want. So I'm hoping and praying that if I'm able to find young women like Hannah and Shea and relate to their content, even though they're younger than me and they live completely different lives as, UGC creators and travelers, if they're talking about things that I can relate to, then surely there's somebody out there that is listening to what I'm saying and can find a way to relate to it as well, and it helps them feel better, and the only thing I could really say if I ever met Shea or Hannah would just be, I'm 33 and I still feel lost, and I'm still trying to figure out how to become found. And it may not necessarily get any easier the older you become, but it sure as hell does get better with age and wisdom. So if there's moments that women like them are feeling, young women like them are feeling, and they don't know what to do next, I think the best thing about that kind of a combination of living in a struggle bus while you're trying to build up your side hustle the way that these women are, is that you're juggling both. You're going to have to keep juggling both. Your side hustle could eventually turn into a full-time thing, and that's great. Maybe it'll help you become who you want to become. Or the side hustle opens a path or opens a door for you to get through, and you don't feel like you're on the struggle bus as much anymore. Or you can at least park that bus and get out for a while before having to get back on. Like, I don't know. That's really the beauty about being in your mid-20s, is you get to make all of these. We've talked about this previously on the show, that like the power of being able to make your own choices is so crucial when you're feeling lost. Because when you're feeling lost, you could do anything. If you don't know what direction to go in, just you pick one, and if it feels good, you keep going, and if it doesn't, drop it. Like, that's really the biggest lesson I could convey, is that we get so stuck on what's right or what's wrong, what's black or what's white. But when you're lost, it's because you're understanding that the world is actually gray. You're living in the gray. And living in the gray is beautiful because it can be all-encompassing. It's a little more welcoming. It doesn't have strict, extreme choices or expectations. But living in the gray can be confusing because it is all-encompassing and the opportunity is there. And you can go in either the left or the right. You can go towards the black or the white. The worst thing that you can do, though, is to just stay there. Stay exactly in that scared, lonely, lost, dysfunctional, dark place. I would never want that to happen to young women like Shea and Hana. They should be pursuing, and you, the listener, they should be pursuing anything and everything that makes them feel happy and alive and challenged and uncomfortable. Learn to grow, learn to expand yourself, expand your mind, expand your experiences. Be okay when you're in moments by yourself, but also be okay when you're sharing those moments with friends or family or your lover, your partner. All of those choices and experiences are meaningful, and they build up, the puzzle of who you are and who you're going to become. Because whoever Shea and Hana are destined to be, they're never going to become those women unless they stay vulnerable and they keep picking choices or choosing things to add into their life that bring more color, bring more love, bring more challenges, bring more opportunity to experience life fully. And that's really all I wanted to say there. Before we close out, I wanted to just hype one of Hannah's posts on TikTok, because I went down a rabbit hole on her page as well, and she opens up a bit more about her user-generated content, but her stuff is a little more about how to travel and how to afford traveling in your 20s, the power of female friendships and generational female friendships, and learning how to be okay with solo travel and solo experiences and what to do in those moments and how to embrace and make the most out of that particular situation. And so I really admire her for being honest about that and building up a travel life for herself and giving you the tips and tricks. I wish I had thought about all of these things, what she calls high-low travel, where you might spend money to get there, but once you're actually at that location, you can find these ways to cut corners in terms of where to spend money or not spend money. So that way you can maximize your experiences with what little budget you may have in your 20s. And so I think that that's beautiful, and super helpful. And again, if I had not been in national security and was not allowed to travel anywhere, I think I would have done something more exciting like what Hannah's doing. But she has this post. It's very similar to what Case Kenny does, where she starts the sentence at the top of the post on each photo, where it's exactly the same, but the ending of the sentence changes. And so on one of these posts where she's talking about, unfortunately, I'm not the old me, ... So insert new phrase. And one of the photos where she listed this says, unfortunately, I'm not the old me. So I won't hate myself into someone I love. And it's a photo of her. It looks like she's somewhere in the Mediterranean, about to jump off a cliff. She's in a black bikini and she's turning around, looking up at the photographer, smiling, like squinting her eyes because she's directly in the sun. But She talks a lot about body positivity on her profile and trying to tell you, like, you're never going to remember what your body looked like when you were traveling. You're going to remember laughing, having fun, creating memories with your friends. You know, the experience of just being in another country and exploring the world. That's what you're going to remember. So stop caring about what the bikini is or what size dress you're wearing, or, you know, you had pasta belly after dinner and being out all day. Like, no one cares. So don't think about it that way. And it really, this series of photos where she talks about, unfortunately, I'm not the old me. So I'm not going to put up with XYZ anymore, or I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm not going to hang out with these types of people anymore because I don't have time for it, like whatever. But unfortunately, I'm not the old me, so I won't hate myself into someone I love. Oh, that is a powerful sentence. Powerful, powerful, powerful sentence. Because this is something that, you know, I think is definitely passed down, not only in society, that teaches women to think these things about themselves, and young men too. Like, they're told in their own ways who they are and what they're supposed to be like and how they're supposed to act and talk and do things as young men. But women especially, and we won't go, that's a whole other, need an expert to come on to kind of talk about how society has created women into thinking the worst things about themselves to keep them controlled and docile and demure. But I'm not the old me, so I won't hate myself into someone I love. I spent so much time throughout my life, various parts of my life, where I think I've always liked who I am as a person, but there were a lot of times where I let other people tell me who I am. And that's, you give away your power when you let somebody do that. And telling me that I'm too skinny or too fat or too short or too tall or too loud or too quiet or too prudish, too open, too whatever, not enough of this or not enough of that, or too needy, too aggressive, too bitchy, too cold, too interested, to the point that I even admitted it the other day, that I don't believe in myself enough, to the point that I hate my own name. Like, I have this really messed up relationship with how I identify sometimes, and you can't inherently hate yourself and your body and your mind and your thoughts and your emotions so much that you think you'll change somehow. Like, you'll magically be like, well, you're so stupid and horrible and messed up. Just go to sleep and you're going to snap your fingers and you're going to wake up a completely different person, completely different personality, completely different, like, you're going to turn into the thing that everybody wants you to be. And you can't. You can't, right? Like, your genetics are your genetics. Your nature versus nurture growing up is what it is. It created you into who you are. Your personality has been formed, okay? It's been formed. You can work on your manners. You can work on your social interaction. You can work on your communication skills, but you're always going to be whoever you inherently are, I think. And to hate yourself into oblivion is never going to make you better. Hating yourself into oblivion is never going to teach you how to love yourself. Think about it. Like, has somebody bullying you when you were growing up, like, did they make you feel better? Like, did that hate that you were receiving make you feel better about yourself and who you were? Like, no, never. You didn't love yourself more when you were going through that. The only way to really shift your mindset to loving yourself is to actively practice loving yourself. If you wouldn't say these things to a friend, and you wouldn't say these things to other people, why would you ever say them to yourself? Why would you ever not love yourself? Not tell yourself the thing that you needed to hear? Not tell yourself the kind things or the thoughtful things or the productive things that you would say to your friends or somebody else that you're close to who might be hurting or going through a tough time? Why hate yourself into someone you love if it doesn't work? So the fact that this 27-year-old young woman on TikTok has said this profound realization, just moves me and makes me feel like it never stops, right? Like it never stops, and you never know what somebody's going through, especially on the internet. Like you can't just judge a book by its cover. You can't just think that, oh, I'm watching this 20-something-year-old travel all over Europe and blog about it, and they're having this great life and they're spending all this money and doing all these things. Like, yeah, maybe, sure. But they could be just as messed up as you. They could hate themselves. They could have an eating disorder. They could have an abusive relationship back home. They could have been abandoned as kids. They could have lost their parents. They could have gone through something totally horrific, and all they're trying to do is make a better life for themselves and find ways to love themselves, just like you are. So I just wanted to leave you guys with these women's information. If you wanted to follow them, if you relate to anything that I've said regarding their content, they'd be a great, new person to just kind of watch and find inspiration from. I know I will. But that was really what I wanted to cover in terms of side hustles and struggle buses. Like, these women are hustling to trying to build lives for themselves in ways that they wouldn't have been able to do, or generations before them would not have been able to do, and they're trying to figure it out, and it's scary, and honestly, I think honorable with how honest and vulnerable both of them are being, and just trying to live a life that makes them happy. And that's what I want for you too. I want you to live a life that's making you happy. I want you to do what you feel brings joy and helps you shine brightly in a world that's really messed up and could use more creativity and love and light. And I feel like when you can see someone truly operating in their element, like really in the zone, like they are doing exactly what it is that they love to do and what they were meant to do, they radiate differently. They attract energy differently compared to somebody who is completely full of self-hatred and loathing and cruelty and puts that back out there into the world. I encourage you, if you're on a struggle bus right now, just be honest with yourself about your experience. Know that the bus ride ends, the roller coaster eventually ends, but what you do after the fact is what's really going to matter. Are you going to find a way to turn that experience into something useful to help yourself and to help others? Or are you going to sit in the dark and complain about living too much in the black or too much in the white? I don't know. I might be living in the gray, but you're welcome to come join me anytime. As I say, wanderers are always welcome. I don't have my path figured out either, but I do have hope that the more that I try and the more that I keep going after things that I think are going to help me, going after things that bring me joy in that moment and might help, that's the best thing for me right now. Going after what I care about and what brings me happiness. That's what's going to sustain me in the meantime while I'm lost. So, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you. And I hope that you have a wonderful week. And I know I'm really not I'm not as consistent right now as I wanted to be. I need to get back on that. It's a lot to keep up with. I'm not going to lie. I am going to keep doing the best that I can, and I hope that you do as well. And enjoy the rest of your day. And thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the show week after week. I can never explain to you how grateful I am for all of you that have joined me on this trip and for being here in this process and listening and sending me your support, sending me questions, sending me your feedback. Please share the show. That's how I can, kind of boost viewership and get more interest behind the show. If you share it, like, subscribe, leave a review. Apple, you can write the review on Apple. You can comment directly on each episode on Spotify, and we can chat together there, going back and forth. I'm also on TikTok, Podcast for the Lost, which is also in the description box. We're on Instagram as well, Podcast for the Lost and Amanda.k.powers. And I appreciate everybody being here every single week. Like, all of my contact info will be in the show notes. I will also add some resources for anybody that may be going through similar things to what we've talked about on today's episode. So If you need additional support, I'll put that in there. And everybody, I will catch up with you as soon as I can next week. And have a great week, everyone. And chat with you soon. And just remember, wanderers are always welcome.